Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about the sneak challenge. This happened over the last, I think, 2 days back. Um, so there were 2-3 challenges that we had to solve, and I am yet to solve the third one. But I wanted to showcase the sauerkraut challenge and how we can solve it. So let's see what the problem is. So it gives us a URL where we can go to. Let's go to that URL, and we can see that there's a input box where we can give something. Um, we will give something here and submit, and it immediately says pickle data was truncated. And as soon as you see pickle, your eyebrows should raise. You should be jumping off the top of your head, top of your chair, and you should be searching for pickle exploit. Pickle is basically the Python way of serialization, deserialization, and whenever you have a serialization, deserialization, and if the data is passed directly to deserialization, there is always a chance that you have exploit there, right? So once we know that, we jump to exploiting Python pickles, search for Python pickles, and see what we can get. So pickle is, as I said, serializing data, right? So what we are interested in deserializing a data. So we can see how we can exploit it, and we can see that we can use this underscore underscore reduce underscore underscore to basically initialize it with whatever we want, and that should help us get to something interesting. Okay, so let's copy paste this code and see where we can go with this. Okay, we will call this exploit.py. Paste this code. Actually, let me move to parrot setup, YouTube, make a directory for snyk ctf101, and go to snyk ctf101, and also copy the name. I know the name. So from exploit.py we will call it sauekraut.py. Okay. So now we run this, and it gives us a nice long base64 string. Copy this. No, before that we need to change something, right? So we know that we don't want to get a reverse shell. We basically just want to show who am I. So I will say who am I, and we will have to probably use subprocess dot check output. Check output. If I can type it correctly, and we don't need this, we need the subprocess. Okay, so all I am doing is changing the OS dot system to subprocess dot check output because we want to see the output, and then we are using everything as it is, and then let's run this again. Check underscore output. Okay, so we get this base64. Let's copy this base64 and come here, paste it here, and see what happens. We can see the output of who am I. It's a user. So let's try something more interesting. So we will open this again, and we will try to see what is there in the current folder with ls minus alrt, right? So let's run this and see what we are able to get. So we will send this, submit, and we get a no such file or directory, ls minus alrt. And as you would have guessed, this is because we cannot send the command as is. We need to give it as a list, right? So if we just change that to a list, and then we take this and copy paste here, submit, we can see the output. Okay, this is good, but now we want to get the flag, and probably we will have to run few commands before we get the flag. So I was thinking, why can't we automate this, and let's take it to a different level. So let's go to inspect, let's go to network tab, give our input again here and do a submit, and we can see that it is doing a post request to this URL, and all that we need is that the request has a text with the base64 data that we have given, and probably we will also need something in the header. Let's see what do we have here. Accept connection, content length, content type, these should be fine. So let's try with one request. So let's open this, and then we will import requests, and so let's just call this here before we do anything. Inside this, let's call requests.post, and we want to call it on the URL, which is HTTP, and then the data that we want to send is basically data equals text equals the base64 encoded URL, say pickle data, and let's put it in a f string, and then we would also like to decode it because otherwise it will show it as byte, right? So we'll decode this, and we will also make it a f string, and we will close this. Okay, now we can put this above this. We need to get the output of this, so we will say r, and then we will print r dot text. This should give us the solution, right? So let's run it. We generate that data, then we make a post request, and we should be able to get a response. It should not take so much of a time. Let me open a new terminal and see what is going on. Have we made any mistake or something? So temporary failure in name resolution. Okay, so we have a typo here. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, and we get a 400. So let's see why we are getting 400. Let me open burp for this, and in the meantime I will define proxies here. So proxies equals HTTP, and for HTTP we want http://localhost 8080, and then we want to add it in the request so that we can see all the requests that are going to the server. So we will say proxies equals proxies, so that all the requests are going through the proxy and we can see what is happening. Okay, so we will open burp and then we will check why we are not getting a response. Proxy intercept is on. Let's send this request, and we should see the request here. Okay, and let's send it to repeater, forward here, and we get a 400 byte request. In the repeater we can see we do not have the content type. I was expecting it would be there, but it seems it is not there, so we'll just copy this. We'll copy it here just to confirm that that is the only problem we have. We'll put it with colon and send it again, and we can see we are getting a 200 okay, and we are also getting the response here. So that's all we wanted. We wanted to add this header, so let's add this header in our request in our Python script. Let's go back to our Python script and we will say headers equals this, and this. We need to put it in double quotes, so, and then we will add it in our requests. Headers equals headers. Save it and run it. And we have to forward it in burp because we are still intercepting it. So let's go to proxy, forward it, and we can see that we have got our response. Okay, this is good. So now let's see what else we can do. Right now we want to run this multiple times, and every time I don't want to come here and change this. So what I want to do is basically I want to have a command line kind of thing for this, and what we are going to do is basically use Cmd. So let's go to Python 3 and see, do I have Cmd2? No. Do I have Cmd? Yes, I have. So we will create a new class, and just in case you didn't know about Cmd and Cmd2, then I'll show you here. So Python 3 Cmd. Cmd is basically a support for line oriented command interpreters, and we will see how it works, but it shows you an example of how it works, right? So we need to create a class which is derived from cmd.cmd, and then we can define our commands with a do underscore, and whatever this is the command. When I get a shell prompt with cmd, I can say forward space whatever, and that whatever is basically the arguments that is passed to this forward function. That's at a very high level how cmd works, but we will quickly see how it really works, right? So I'll say class my cmd, and this is coming from cmd.cmd, and before I forget, I'll also import cmd here, and then we will come to this, and we don't want intro, probably we will just add prompt. Prompt will be the name of our challenge, so I'll say sauekraut, and then this is my prompt. Now by default, if we define something with do underscore, then that becomes a command for this thing, but we can always have a default just default function, and the default function will get all the parameters that you have passed here, right? So we basically want to have a default function here, and this will have self. Self is what will basically give you the class access, all the functions, all the parameters defined in the class. And then we want to have arg here. This is the arguments that are passed to the command line, and this could be multiple arguments, so all the arguments are passed here. For simplicity, I will just say print arg to see how it is working, and then to call this, all you need to do is let me first comment this out. So I'll just say start with comment. Okay. So now that I have this commented, I can simply say my cmd loop. Okay, so this will create a command loop where I can keep giving the commands, and basically whatever commands I give, I should see it being echoed out again, because I have just said print of arg here. And to make it more clear, let me also add something here, so that we know that it is coming from our function and not by default. It is not outputting by default, right? So let's run this. Unindent does not match, and this also we will probably just comment it out. We don't need this. Okay, so we get this, and then if I say ls minus alrt, you can see that it is giving my name and then ls minus alrt. So that's a good start. That's what we wanted. But we were also, what we wanted was that the arguments, if there are multiple arguments, then we have to pass it as a list, and we know that because if we passed it as a single string, it didn't work, right? So what I want here is, basically I don't want this, but rather what I want is I'll say args equals arg dot split, and that will basically split the arguments by space, and it will give me a list of arguments. And then if I do a print of args, I should be able to see those, right? So let's exit out of this. I can do Control C, exit out of this, or I can even type quit and it will exit out of it. And again, if I do ls minus alrt, I can see that we can basically see that it has become a array, right? Now this array I want to basically pass to RCE, right? So when I pass it to RCE, this should actually go into my reduce function, and in the reduce function I should be able to use this as is, and I should be able to get this as my base 64 encoded input, right? So I can say in base 64 is equal to this, and this should give me the pickled input that I want to give to my function. Okay, now once I get this, I can always call a new function called let's say okay, I'll just call it here to avoid everything else. I'll just copy paste the whole thing and paste it here, and then we will just indent it correctly. Okay, so that's all we had to do. So we are giving the args, and we have to send it as base 64 URL say base included pickled decode data, and we don't have the pickled data. Pickled should have been this, so I'll copy this as well, but we have to make a small change here, and that change is we want to send args in this, and we don't need that. Okay, so now once we get the arguments, we split it. This becomes an array. This array is what we are sending into RCE. RC will basically pickle it and give us a dump. We will take a dump of that and then send it to our server. If we have done it correctly, we should be able to see something. RCE takes no argument. So I'll have to check this. Python 3 class arguments. Okay. Okay, so I think I can take that I can just say that RCE basically takes args here, and this hopefully will solve it. Arg is not defined. Undo. I need a init function, I guess. So I'll say init self comma arg and self dot arg equals arg. So here I don't need to pass this. I can just say self dot arg. Okay. See, we are still using proxy, and we should not be, but this is probably a good idea to just verify that we are getting a response. Okay, so this looks good now. We are able to get the response from our server, and even if we are giving multiple space separated things, it is working as we expected it to. Now what we can do is we can use this to browse the data as we want it to, right? So we can even try to okay, this is fine. So now if we just do ls, we can see the output. I'll just remove intercept from my burp. We can see that there is a app, there is a flag, GUI unicorn config.py requirements.txt. So if I wanted, I can just say cat flag and I should get the flag. This is the flag that we had to submit, so you can get the flag here, and if you wanted you can just say ls/ and you can see that it has been root dev etc flag home lib and all those things, right? So if I do ls-alt/flag, ls-alt/flag, not flaf, we should be able to see that it's a file which is owned by user. So now you have basically a working shell. It's not a persistent shell in the sense that if I do cd to slash and expect that it will work, it will not, because we are not retaining the state on the server side. But at least it will be something where you will be able to execute some commands to get the output without changing things again and again on the server side. That's all I had for today. So just in case you are interested in this piece of code that we have written, as you saw, I have already created it in my parrot setup folder, which is where mostly all the things that I publish on YouTube are present, and you can find that on github.com raj77 in parrot setup. Here you will find a YouTube folder, which is where you will be able to see the script that we have written today. Thank you all.